today. Good afternoon, everybody. Y'all come on into the room. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hopefully, you have gotten here without too many technical difficulties. We have been working through every obstacle that floats our way today. So, thank you for your resilience. All right. So, the Zoom link is working now. Go ahead and click that link. I also shared it in the chat for you. You will also notice that in the chat, I have dropped a link for you to sign in for today's session. That is going to be very important for us, especially for individuals who might be in need of CEU units, credit, should I say, for attending today's session. So in order to keep us on time, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So again, like I said, welcome everyone to the Young Minds Matter Conference. This is day one. It is off to an amazing start. My name is Nzinga Kala, and I am proud to be your moderator for today's session. Now, shortly, we're going to watch a documentary film created by Sister Kudisa Muhammad called Mind Forgotten. And as you can see her beautiful face, she is here with us today. After this film is done, we're going to head over to another link to where Sister Kudisa is going to be sitting on a panel talking about the use of film in healing, okay? So be prepared to leave this link and head over to another link as soon as we're done with this session today. So I am going to go ahead and share with you that, you know, some of the things that you've already heard in earlier previous sessions today. We want this space to remain supportive, be respectful, keep it an inclusive environment. You can keep yourself on mute, but if you do have a question, feel free to raise your hand, and we will try to address that if we have time before we have to head over for the panel discussion following this film. The chat on Whova is working. If you have comments, definitely use it for that. You can use it to interact with others attending this session today. But if you have a question for our panelists, be sure to put the question in the session Q&A tab, and we will be sure to ask that question of Sister Kudisa before we are done here today. So please join me in welcoming Sister Kudisa Mifta Muhammad, who is a graduating senior from the Elevated Places. She's a valedictorian and a graduate from Houston Community College with her associate degree as magna cum laude. Before finishing high school, she was accepted as a junior to the University of Houston, where she completed her first semester as a full-time student with all straight A's, y'all. With her passion for mental health, specifically within the Black and Muslim community, she produced the Mind Forgotten documentary. And with that, I am going to pause so that we can enjoy this documentary, learn from this documentary, and don't forget, get ready to ask some questions. It's definitely going to get your mind going so that we can interface with Sister Kudisa once this is done. Welcome. All right.
And this is more of a conversation. I want you to be authentic and say whatever comes to your mind. And we're gonna start. I'm gonna say state your name and position, and you just say your name, and you can say that as well.
Okay. Studies show that irritability in the average white teenager is often labeled as depression. That same behavior is more likely to be seen as disruptive in Black or Latino children, and doctors say that can lead to feelings of hopelessness at a very young age.
African American or Black patient is more likely to not get treatment and to be incarcerated.
Suicides among Black people have been on the rise over the past year.
With a crisis in our country, a staggering rise in suicide attempts by Black children. NBC's Rahema Ellis now with one mother's heartbreaking message. And we want to note, if you do have youngsters in the room, some of what's discussed is troubling to hear.
We teach our children about stranger danger or guns or any other type of outward hurt that we try to protect them from. This is one that I was blindsided by. My 10-and-a-half-year-old son, my miracle child, my only child, was dead.
It's not a subject that's been brought up that much
We all
growing
went
up.
to the hospital. It was very traumatic. It was horrible. And then we came home and we never mentioned it ever again.
Our community is suffering.
The numbers in the report are stunning. Suicide attempts by Black teens, self-reported attempts, have gone up 73% in recent years. And Black children under 13 are now twice as likely to die by suicide than white children.
Black folk don't commit suicide.
I am Kudisa Muhammad, the creator, director, editor, coordinator of Minds Forgotten, a story of Muslim mental health.
All right, quiet on the set, and action.
Traditionally in the African American community is very rare, has been until recently, rarely discussed, rarely mentioned. We always had, a lot of jokes about mental illness, mental health.
In my neighborhood, we were not really aware of it. And like I said, mental health was not even a phrase that we would use. We would basically call somebody crazy.
I didn't know what to do to take care of my mental wellness. Nobody said if you eat this way, or if you drink water, or if you take these vitamins, or if you don't get too stressed or whatever. Nobody, it just wasn't talked about back then.
I never heard the term mental health. I don't recall it being a topic of discussion.
I really didn't understand what mental health was because it was just chalked off as just being crazy.
We see these stigmas being that people who have this kind of behavior that is out of the ordinary. Sometimes we get angry quick. Sometimes we get sullen. We get real depressed. We get really within ourselves. Other times we become extremely violent. And other times then we find ourselves self-medicating, or in some cases the natural things like food. We call it comfort food. Sometimes we have deviant sexual behavior, drugs, alcohol use. So all of these things are contributing to the overall detriment of our community. And most of it, if not all of it, starts with the mind and of course our spirituality or lack thereof.
Because of our history here from slavery, a reticence to discuss mental illness because it has been used as a weapon to disenfranchise and incarcerate, put persons in mental hospitals and mental institutions. And there's a history of that directly related to the post-slavery era.
What do you think caused such a disregard for our own mental health in the Black community specifically?
Slavery. We lost the identity of self.
We suffer from what Dr. Leary calls post-traumatic slave syndrome, meaning there's multi-generational trauma, violence against our community, and then you find there's a lack of access or opportunity. When you put those two together, you have what she describes as this post-traumatic slave syndrome.
And it's fostered by continued by white supremacy. You know, when you're talking about post-traumatic slave syndrome, we're still walking as slaves and don't even, the sad thing about it, when you're talking about mental health, we don't even know it. So you can have physical health and going through with slaves, they were being physically abused, right? That had an effect on the way that they were thinking. So now you fast forward that 467 years, right? And you're still looking at worse behavior. Where does all this stem from?
Many of the inmates that you work with are Black.
Yes, I do. I see, if I had to do some numbers, mostly Black and Hispanic.
Okay.
Yeah. I provide substance abuse services to inmates, male and female, and I go in discussing their chemical dependency issues, but that always leads to the other life issues.
Do you find that men suffer differently than women do, or express that differently than women do?
Most definitely.
We're taught that a man should be a protector, man should be a provider, man should be a producer. But yet the Black man in this society cannot protect himself, cannot protect his woman, cannot protect his children, cannot protect his family. He's unable to provide. He's cut off from opportunity. This is why the Muslims say we want equality. What kind of equality? We want equality of opportunity. We want membership in society with the best of civilized society. We have been denied that. We've been denied the ability to be a producer, to take our ideas that are in our heads, that we see from young boys and growing up, and then we don't see that vision ever come to fruition. They say that there's nothing greater or nothing stronger or more powerful than a made-up mind. But how about a mind that is made up to do something, but yet at every turn it's destroyed? And being an endangered species, you have behaviors that you want to survive. You want to protect yourself. So you're very reluctant to admit your vulnerabilities.
If you're playing football and you have an injury and your coach says to you, well, walk it off, which in essence is saying you're not really hurting, and you're being wimpy and you're being emotional by letting that out that you're hurting, when in actuality, you know, you got a little bruise and it's not that big a deal. Come on, get back in the game. The team needs you. Put on your pants, so to speak.
There's this idea that all you have to do is rely on God to get better. Who needs a psychologist when you have prayer is the general consensus that most people have. They don't really believe in looking for help. Like everything just feels like it's too much. And they would just, like have like a general, like, don't worry, your family's here for you. You're in good health. Like other people have it so much worse. You're doing fine.
One thing that has always bothered me, and perhaps is one of the motivators behind creating this documentary, is that I feel in the Muslim community we have spirituality with being a cure-all for our mental health struggles. And while your mental health is certainly tied to your spirituality, and an increase in your connection with whoever you believe in, we believe in Allah, does certainly have an impact on your mental health. Struggling with depression and sitting down on the prayer rug is not going to automatically solve the problems that you are enduring. You have to implement some of the actionable items into your own life to see the differences from depression to happiness.
People who are about their overall well-being, mentally, physically, and spiritually, they find evidence in the teachings that encourages us to say, let me take care of my mental health. But those who may not be into that are kind of unbalanced. You know, like sometimes we can be unbalanced, like we could be all how to eat to live, but all this other stuff we ignoring. We can be all the self-improving study guys and all this other stuff we ignoring. So for people who are imbalanced already, they will look to find something in the teachings to justify them not dealing with themselves. Because the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said this. He said one of the greatest battles that we can actually engage in is the battle with self. He said, but that's one of the most difficult battles. So for some of us, we don't want to get into that. And that may have also been part of the reason why some people may have resisted and are resisting the whole Dianetics. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan talks about what happens when the mind is imbalanced. But if we are open and honest about this, Allah will bless us to get access to information that's out here that can help us get a grip on our mental health. Because there are all type of, there of course counseling, but there are also herbs that we can begin to take. There are foods that we can begin to push away from our diet that can begin to start helping us to grow to be mentally strong. But we can't get to that place if we're not honest that we actually have an issue. Because how can you fix something that we don't want to even acknowledge is broke or in need of repair?
You can really see our mental health and wellness crisis come out in our families. The way we treat each other, the way we treat our children, our parenting styles, what we do to punish our children, the disconnect that parents have with their children, just the Black family, the destruction of it is obvious that we're not having conversations within our families, but also like personally, we're not willing to kind of look at ourselves. When we think of mental health, we can see it over there, but we can't see it over here. We can't see it in ourselves.
So much pressure in this life of mine. I cried times I once contemplated suicide.
And I think about killing myself, and I love myself way more than I love you.
Much is, I think the way social media plays a part in our mental health, especially when it comes to stuff like TikTok and other apps like that, is unhealthy coping mechanism.
Because we hear it every single day, so we've grown numb to it. Man, suicide rates is this, the depression rates is this, man, the black on black crime is this. We hear it so much now, it's like, okay, just another person committed suicide. Just another person gets murdered, until it hits home for us. And then we want to cry wolf. If we was to have a greater level of love for one another, there is no way that we can have people joking about depression on social media, because they'll know their brother, their sister's going through it. There's no way we can have people joking about suicide because they know their brother, their sister, their cousin, their mother was just in the process of about to commit suicide just a few days ago. There's no way, because the love that we have for one another is so great that it beats the very agenda that the media and this world order wants to put onto the youth in particular.
Especially maladaptive daydreaming. Maladaptive daydreaming is basically when you spend a very long time, or you could just say daydreaming as well, a very long time, almost uncontrollably going through like these apps and watching videos and sort of daydreaming about scenarios that these videos come up for you, daydreaming about a life that you would want to live based off of these videos. Daydreaming about like cute people you see that you would like to spend time with, whatever. You just spend your life, rather than living your actual life, you spend it in your head creating scenarios based off of like whatever influences you have through social media. And I think it as an emotional coping mechanism, and it's very unhealthy because it doesn't teach you how to address and solve the problems you're facing in your own life. So instead, you create this alternate reality, whether online and in your head, to sort of avoid those issues, avoid those problems.
We've heard so much. There's so much consciousness, quote unquote, going around in the Black community and Muslim community now. It's like, either we acknowledge it or we don't. And if we don't, then we're going to continue to suffer from the same things that we've been suffering on social media, especially making jokes out of situations that really aren't even funny.
When it comes to the other type of stuff that we have as being members of the Nation of Islam, like our headpieces, our tams, or like different outfits or garments that we wear, my mom was always the person that had me wear it when I go places, when I be in events. So I don't look like the typical Muslim. So being both Black Muslim woman and being Muslim Nation of Islam, it kind of made me feel isolated growing up. And I guess that did have sort of a toll. It did play sort of a part in the declining of my mental health when I was very young.
Honestly, I don't think that it's a blame on the nation. I do believe that the interpretation of some of the wording, maybe in the Quran or in the study guide or wherever people are getting their information, I think they may interpret it a certain way and then spew that out. But I wouldn't necessarily blame the nation for that. I would definitely blame it on that person, how they feel, how their parents raised them. All that plays a part in how they raise their children.
I had a friend who overdosed, and her mother had recently passed away, like probably 6 months prior to that, and her whole mindset just completely changed.
You in a good school, you in a good neighborhood, you do this, you do that. What could you possibly be what's it called depressed about? But it's just like small stuff like that can lead to somebody feeling like depressed or not feeling worthy enough for like love.
Most mental health problems or illnesses, I believe, they said happen, from a very young age up until the age of age 14. Like that's typically when it starts hitting. And that makes me to think, why is that?
As a teenager, you're experiencing everything for the first time. You're going through situations for the first time. Everything in your life feels so much more immediate and extreme than it actually is. So a lot of teenagers are going through a lot. And if you notice them changing their behavior, if you notice them changing how they act, they're usually going through something. And I think a lot of parents write that off as their children being lazy or their children, not wanting to do anything, when really it's a mental health issue.
Of course, I dealt with a lot of mental health issues, anxiety, depression. Many of my peers go through the same type of struggles and know they don't have many people to turn to. I was saying growing up, I think what really impacts mental health is having people around you.
When my friend OD'd, it was just like, wow. And I had just saw her 2 days prior. And I just wish we would have had a class to just really cope and talk about our feelings, or even me, dealing with my friend who wanted to commit suicide. I was doing the best that I thought was okay with trying to, talk with her and to just change her mindset and her thinking. But even a friend in that position, for us to know how we should properly go about dealing with the situation. If I would have had a class, I would have been more prepared for that certain situation with my friend, and then also dealing with my friend that OD'd and maybe potentially us being able to help her.
When you don't bring questions that would help open and be vulnerable with your child, you know, then the child feels like, oh, well, my mama don't care. My daddy don't care. I cry in my room 5 days a week, but I mean, they may or may not hear it, but they haven't asked me how I was doing. I walk in this house and it's Assalamualaikum and everybody disperse.
Sitting with your thoughts is probably one of the worst feelings ever, especially when they're not good thoughts. So sitting in terrible thoughts and feeling alone and not being able to go to anybody, it brings you from that point of just plain sadness to depression. You feel me? Like, many people, myself included, we had to sit with certain things and feel certain ways and walk around certain people that we had issues with and and it started to weigh more and more, develop a weight. When you're not able to talk to anybody about said issues, then it becomes just more of a burden on yourself. Being young, being 11, 12, 13, like, you don't really know how to rationalize those emotions and just frame them in, this is just a now thing. When you're young, it's like, oh, this is the absolute end of the world. So I feel like the lack of having conversations, the lack of sisterhood, the lack of just people around you, a support system that's able to listen to you and not judge you and just be there for you when in your time of need, it really just keeps you closed in and isolated and in solitude. And it's just, I think it makes it worse. And a lot of terrible things happened due to that, not just with me, with my peers, because of the lack of conversation.
Most of mental health issues originate in one's childhood, you know? And so the common dynamic in Muslim families of a mother that's like overly smothering and overly caring, like she puts her whole heart onto you, causes so much pressure. And then a father who's like very distanced, who's gets mad very easily, one that you feel like you can never be completely yourself around. A very common sentiment in many Muslim people, in many Muslim marriages. I remember when I was younger, my dad once said, like, man's life ends when he gets married and a woman's life begins, which I think is very, very true in Islamic culture, the religion and the culture, yeah.
The biggest thing you hear in the community is, I don't even put my hands on you. You know, you girl, my mama used to throw a shoe at me. Like, that don't mean when you yelling and cussing and, you know, whatever the case, that doesn't mean that doesn't hurt me. As a child, you shouldn't have to hear you're a burden, you do everything wrong, let me do it, because you just, you can't do nothing. Then it's like, those thoughts are going to, you know, constantly come up. You ain't nothing, you ain't good enough, you are a burden, I should have waited to have children. A lot of times, you know, they want to compare how they grew up to how you grew up. You have it so much better. That doesn't mean that life is peaches and cream and I'm just okay.
Like, because sometimes I find myself thinking, or just like at night crying, it's just like, man, it's people out here who don't have this and this, and I'm sitting here in my room with the air on, I got clothes on, it's just like, why am I sitting here complaining? But I feel like, I don't know, I feel like everybody's struggle is different. Like, I'm not saying that homeless people who have to go without don't deal with mental health problems, because I never know they may, but everybody's struggle is different. If I'm struggling with this, somebody else may not be as fortunate as I am, but they could be the happiest person in the world and not dealing with anything.
In the nation, I do agree and believe that it is very important to shelter your children from some things. I don't believe, I don't have children. However, I don't believe that you need to shelter your children from everything. At the end of the day, your child is another human. And you know, they have to take control of their own life. But when they have no experiences it's almost as if they're starting as an infant, and so they're trying a piece of everything. They're trying a piece of everything, and that's, as a parent, you know, you think you're doing very good with sheltering your child, but in fact, when they get to college and they're away from you, when they get their own apartment and they're away from you, I can almost always tell you that they're trying a piece of everything.
I don't know, maybe 12 to 17, it is no way, like, you don't like boys or you don't like girls. We're not gonna even have this conversation. I don't understand why they don't have the conversation, because they were once that age and they once felt these things, so you know we're feeling the same thing. So imagine me not telling you about it. That means, well, to me, that would mean that, hey, something is going on. She may feel some way about somebody. She just not telling you because it's only natural and it has happened.
Because there is no more efficient way that we can do it except for love. Because that's the only way that we can even reach a state of self-acceptance, because we got to love ourselves. If it's not a sincere love or a sincere relationship, then, you know, you won't see certain things. You know, you won't see your daughter or your son go off to school one way smiling, and then when they come back from volleyball practice or football practice or basketball practice, or, you know, studying from with their teacher or classmates, you won't see them come in, you know, a different way possibly. They may come in with that same smile, but you won't notice that little change in their spirit. And so, you know, being already pre-connected with an individual before they face adversities that may bring upon mental health challenges or mental health illnesses, that you definitely have to have an eye and a spirit that's very attentive towards people. You know, saying, quote unquote, man, I'm too busy to talk to my child. I'm too busy to do this. I got to go to work. I got to do this. It's sacrifices that have to be made for the future. Yeah, you may have to go to work, but man, you can't spare 15 minutes. You can't spare this. You can't spare that. Just have a 15, 20, 30-minute conversation to talk to your daughter, to talk to your son, to find out, okay, are they okay? Why are they performing like this in school? What's going on? So we just have to be more humble as mentors and, you know, parent figures in life, and really dealing with our children and these young children out of love and empathy, really.
I feel like, I don't know, but the first thing that I thought about was prayer. Yeah. And I feel like prayer can be a form, well, prayer, in my opinion, it is a form of therapy. Because I feel like it has to be cultivated, because at the end of the day, if you don't got nobody to turn to, you can always turn to God. And at the end of the day, he's one of the main people that control the things that go on in your life. So I feel like sometimes, like, I'm trying to get to the point where at the end of the day, I'm just let go and let God, like, for real. Like, or just find somebody who is mentally on the same way with you, and they think about and incorporate like prayer and like meditation and things like that with you to talk about things with.
Spiritual development, that's another one of those things that personally, it wasn't just, I don't know, I think you could say it was taught, or it didn't just come to me. I had to
cultivate
grow in that. I had to work on that, and I'm still working on that. So with prayer and using the Quran, I think that's where the relief comes from, because it gives you a peace of mind, because ultimately you're giving that stress and that difficulty to something that you know is greater than you. And so my mom used to tell us, she used to say, you can't pray in stress, or you can't pray and worry. You gotta pick one or the other, because once you give it to him, hey, you gotta let him do what he does.
That's true.
After, of course, doing all that you can do.
I believe about 1/5 to 1/4 of individuals on the planet suffer from mental health issues or suffer from mental illness. And so for it to be that large or that vast of a number, we definitely have to put that much more of an emphasis on dealing with it.
People need to start viewing mental health injuries, mental health issues as much as they view physical health injuries, physical health issues. In terms of, if you break a leg, they're gonna take you to a doctor. They're not gonna tell you to pray about it. If you're struggling from anxiety, they should also take you to a doctor. They shouldn't tell you to pray about it. They have to start. Mental health issues can kill you, just like physical health issues. So they need to start treating the two equally. I think that's the biggest thing we can start doing as a community, is realize that neglecting one and deeming it inferior in term or less severe than the other is only contributing to how much we overlook it and how many people suffer with it. As a community, if we start taking the whole issue more seriously, and if we separate mental health issues from religion.
You have to have great timing, words, and your tone. Start in prayer, end in prayer. You know, it's peaceful. It's just very important to communicate where the person is listening. Because when you listen, then you can be like, man, well, I see where that may have been interpreted that way. It wasn't my intention. I do apologize. That wasn't my intention.
Every conversation that we have with each other, every conversation that we have, or every word that we speak to, whether it be a stranger on the street or our closest friend, has to be driven and rooted out of love. Because they say perfect love casteth out fear. And so fear, in my opinion, is one of the biggest things that is at the root of mental illness and mental health. Fear of accepting who you really are as an individual because of the stigmas of society. But when the conversations that we have with one another are surrounded and rooted in love, and we understand the power that love really has, love just isn't a word. Love is an actual action, taking the steps to really make sure someone is straight or someone is good mentally, spiritually, physically, every facet of it before they will even do it. That's true love.
I don't want people to think I'm not okay. Like, so if I'm telling you something, I don't want you to look at me later and be like, you know, give me a certain look or make me feel like a victim for feeling or expressing myself in a sense of vulnerability.
It's important to say, you know, we got to take care of our mental health. We tell children, yeah, you get sick if you eat all that candy. But they don't tell them when you're feeling stressed, let's do something about it because you could get sick. Let's deal with it. Let's cope with it. What do you do when you feel stressed? Come on, baby, let's go take a walk.
Darkness dispels when light is shined on it. So light is symbolic of knowledge, education, of learning. So what we need to do is we got to start having discussions about mental health, like what you're doing right now with this. You know, when parents who are in the Nation of Islam see this, it's going to make us sit back and say, wow, you know, I got to begin to start paying attention.
As soon as they can begin understanding sentences, you know, like we're talking two, you know, we can say, oh, we can even just talk about feelings. Oh, you're sad? Well, what happened? Oh, so you're frustrated. Kind of giving them the language. Oh, so you're disappointed. Oh, it's okay, baby. It's okay to cry. It's okay to cry, you know. And so as soon as they begin understanding language, and as soon as they can start telling you or even start showing you feelings. The youngest that I take is 3 years old, and I've had 3-year-olds to make a wonderful adjustment and change a lot through our time together. That shows you that 3 years old, they can learn how to cope. They can learn how to healthily cope, right? So when they scream and holler and fall on the floor, that doesn't help. That doesn't help. Maybe if you tell me what's wrong, talk to me, tell me what's wrong. You know, and as parents, we are guiding them into wellness. But I do believe that it can be resolved. I believe our people have what it takes. We're strong. We're strong people. We're so strong. We have strong minds to be able to even be functioning in the way that we're functioning right now. We must be super. We've got to be. And then we get down to the specific things that we've endured. It is amazing that we are still here. But we are still here. We're still fighting, and we're still adding to America's greatness. We're adding to the world's greatness. And so I know we have what it takes to resolve this, but we got to see it as a crisis first.
I don't remember having many conversations about mental health in my household, among my friends, among the Muslim community. It's always been something that I have been interested in. I first wanted to become a psychologist around the age of 11 or 12 years old, around that age. I've always been interested in therapy and counseling and the way the mind works, why people experience depression, what has to happen for an individual to undergo such a adverse condition to the human mind. I want people to watch this documentary and feel inspired, feel empowered, to first acknowledge what they're feeling within themselves. I want them to acknowledge any mental health struggles that they have encountered or are going through presently. I want people to not skip over or condemn or invalidate people who are going through mental health struggles. It's so important that we acknowledge ourselves and that we acknowledge others. I want people from every single generation. I want my grandparents' generation, my parents, and my peers to look at this documentary and feel a sense of urgency to do better. Our viewpoints on mental health are not going to change until each of us individually makes the decision to make better choices. We have to encourage more honest dialogue, be ready to give and receive more honest dialogue. We have to understand that depression does not equate to crazy, that schizophrenia or various mental health disorders does not equate to crazy, that we have to see those discrepancies and be open and honest about how we're feeling about specific topics and be ready to receive the viewpoints of other people about how they are feeling. And this is a call to action to my generation. We must be the last generation to stigmatize mental health. Our children should feel comfortable to come to us about their mental health struggles. We need to encourage open, honest, and healthy conversation with our future children and with ourselves.
Awesome. Sister Khadisha, that was an amazing documentary. Thank you so much for the mindset to produce that, to write that, to direct that, to make that happen. You did that, and thank you for that perspective. We do have one question, and I'm trying to, let's see, is Sister Khadisha still on? I see.
I'm here.
Okay, there she is. Okay, your alias was on the screen. I'm like, what? Who is that? Were you signed into someone else's Zoom?
No, I'm here under Khadisha Muhammad.
Okay, I don't know what that was. But anyway, thank you again, Sister Khadisha. We do have one question that came in through our Q&A session here. And it says, can the Muslim perspective on mental health be identified in other belief systems?
So in terms of the Muslim perspective, are they saying the way mental health is approached in the Quran or in some of the teachings that we have?
I think that's open to your own interpretation. But yeah, I think that's a great way to look at that question.
Okay, yes, ma'am. So what I would say to that is oftentimes you will find a lot of similarities and common themes within the literature in both the Muslim religion or other religions that are out there. So a lot of times you will see prophets, you will see other religious figures who come across mental health issues. And in literature across religions, you will see how they approach their mental health struggles. You will often see them leaning on someone that they were close to. You will see them confiding in, whether that be a wife or a husband. You will see them confiding in different people that they have around them. You may see, for example, if a religious figure is going through something, if a religious figure is going through a personal mental health struggle, they may take some time to reflect. They may take some time to get on a prayer rug or pray to Allah or pray to a God. So you will see those common themes across religions, whether that be in Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, just across the board. You will see how Allah, how other gods, how religious figures approach their mental health struggles.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. And let me just do another quick check. Sometimes there's a lag between the questions that doesn't allow me to see it right away. Right now, I am not seeing any additional questions in the chat or in the session Q&A. I just want to read you some of the feedback that I did see in the chat. Vicky Coffey says she's inspired by your work, Sister Khadisa, and keep doing a great job at what you're doing. Roosevelt says great choices on all of the people that you interviewed in the film. They really did have a lot of food for thought to get us to think about. And, you know, even me, I'm a mother of a young 6-year-old child, and I'm like, there's always room for improvement, you know.
Absolutely.
Gotta do better. So thank you. I will listen more. So, you know, you definitely teaching the masses today. There was so much love and insight that was brought out of this documentary today. Let's see. Someone else said, thank you for sharing this documentary with us. It's such an insightful film. Very wise young people. Very powerful documentary. It lifts up the stories and issues that need to be heard. I couldn't agree with that more. Absolutely. Let me see. I think I have another. Nope, that's not another question coming in over there. So I'm going to give us time to get over to the panel discussion, which is going to be starting in about 3 minutes. So everyone, thank you again for attending this session and enjoying the documentary with us. So we can meet Sister Khadisa over on the panel discussion starting in 3 minutes. Hope you're enjoying the conference, and we'll see you in the next session. Bye.